A black street boy plays an old song on a broken guitar. A billionaire stopped and did this. Marcus Thornton III stepped out of his Rolls-Royce on 125th Street in Harlem when he heard a melody that stopped his heart. A black boy, maybe 14, sat on a cardboard box with a cracked guitar, playing a song that Marcus thought had been buried with his family's darkest secret 60 years ago. The boy's fingers moved across the broken strings with the kind of soul that couldn't be taught, only inherited. Marcus's chauffeur was asking if everything was all right, but Marcus couldn't hear him. He could only hear that song, those notes, that ghost from 1962 reaching through time to grab him by the throat. "Where did you learn that song?" His voice came out strangled, desperate. The boy looked up, and his eyes held no fear, only the cold fire of someone who had been waiting for this moment. "My grandfather wrote it, before your family killed him and stole everything he had." The boy's name was Isaiah, and he had been living on the streets for 2 years, ever since his mother lost her battle with cancer and the foster system decided he was more trouble than he was worth. He was 14 years old, skinny from hunger, old from grief, and carrying the weight of a legacy he barely understood. Everything he owned fit in a backpack, 2 changes of clothes, a photograph of his mother, and the guitar. The guitar was older than Isaiah's mother had been, its body cracked and held together with duct tape, its strings mismatched and worn thin. It had belonged to his grandfather, then his grandmother, then his mother, and now him. It was worthless to anyone who didn't know its history. To Isaiah, it was everything. Marcus Thornton III was 68 years old and worth approximately $4.2 billion. Thornton Records, the company his father had founded in 1960, was the largest independent music label in America, responsible for launching the careers of dozens of legendary artists. Marcus had spent his entire adult life building on his father's legacy, expanding the empire, burnishing the family name. He sat on charity boards and donated to music education programs and was regularly featured in articles about philanthropy and corporate responsibility. He was, by every measure that mattered in polite society, a good man. But Marcus knew the truth about his family's fortune. He had known it since he was 12 years old when he had overheard a conversation he was never meant to hear. And he had spent the last 56 years trying to figure out how to make it right, without destroying everything his family had built. "You need to come with me." Marcus's voice was steadier now, but his hands were still trembling. "I need to understand what you know. Who told you?" "I'm not going anywhere with you." Isaiah's fingers hadn't stopped moving on the guitar strings, but the melody had shifted. Darker now, more discordant, a warning wrapped in music. "I know who you are, Mr. Thornton. I know what your family did to mine. And if you think I'm going to let you silence me the way you silenced my grandfather, you're wrong." He looked up, and Marcus saw something in the boy's eyes that made his blood run cold. Recognition. Not the recognition of a stranger meeting a celebrity. The recognition of a hunter who had finally found his prey. "I'm not trying to silence you." Marcus took a step closer, then stopped when Isaiah's posture tensed. "I'm trying to understand. That song, River of Stars, it was written by James Miller in 1962. It became a #1 hit in 1963, recorded by Billy Dawson. It's been the foundation of my family's catalog for 60 years. He paused, choosing his words carefully. But Billy Dawson didn't write that song, and neither did my father, despite what the copyright registration says. James Miller wrote it. James Miller wrote all of them, and James Miller died in a car accident 3 weeks after he refused to sign over the rights." Isaiah stopped playing. For the first time since Marcus had approached, the street corner fell silent. "You know," it wasn't a question. "I know." Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper. "I've known since I was 12 years old. I heard my father talking to his lawyer about it, about the Miller problem, about how they had handled it, about making sure no one ever found out what really happened. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them, they were wet with tears he had been holding back for half a century. I've spent my entire life trying to find James Miller's family, trying to find a way to make this right, and I never could. They disappeared after the funeral. His wife, his children, everyone. It was like they had been erased from existence. They didn't disappear. Isaiah set the guitar down carefully, his movements deliberate and controlled. They hid. My great-grandmother took her children and ran because she knew your father would come for them next. She changed their names, moved to Detroit, never spoke about the past. My grandmother grew up not knowing who her father really was, just that he was a musician who died young and left them nothing. His voice hardened. But before she died, my great-grandmother told my grandmother the truth, and my grandmother told my mother, and my mother told me. The story got passed down like the guitar, like the songs, like this. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, holding it up so Marcus could see. A guitar pick, yellowed with age, carved from bone, with the initials JM 1962 etched into its surface. Marcus stared at the pick like it was a holy relic, which, in a way, it was. James Miller's pick. I've seen photographs of him playing with it. I thought it was lost. It was never lost. It was hidden. Isaiah turned the pick over in his fingers, the afternoon light catching the worn edges. My great-grandmother kept it safe for 60 years. She said it was the only thing my great-grandfather cared about more than his guitar. He had it custom-made from the bone of a deer he hunted himself. He said as long as he had this pick, his music would never die. Isaiah looked at Marcus with an expression that was far too old for his 14 years. He was wrong. His music didn't die. It got stolen and sold and turned into money for people who never earned it. But his pick survived. And so did his family. And now, he paused, a cold smile crossing his face. Now we're going to take back everything you stole. The conversation that followed lasted 3 hours. Marcus took Isaiah to a diner around the corner. The boy was clearly hungry, and Marcus needed time to explain, to understand, to figure out how two people on opposite sides of a 60-year-old crime could find a path forward. Isaiah ate 2 cheeseburgers, a plate of fries, and a slice of apple pie while Marcus talked. He told Isaiah about the night he had overheard his father's confession, about the decades he had spent trying to locate James Miller's descendants, about the private investigators, the genealogy searches, the dead ends that seemed designed to keep the truth buried forever. He told Isaiah about his father's death 3 months ago. The old man had lived to 94, never facing justice, never admitting what he had done, taking his secrets to a grave that would be marked with monuments and praised by obituaries that called him a pioneer of the music industry. "Why should I believe you?" Isaiah asked when Marcus finished. His plate was empty, but his suspicion was still full. "You could be lying. You could be trying to find out what I know so you can destroy the evidence, pay me off, make this all go away." Marcus nodded slowly. "You're right. You have no reason to trust me. My family has given your family nothing but reasons for distrust." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a worn leather folder, setting it on the table between them. "So let me give you reasons to believe. This folder contains copies of every document I've collected over the past 40 years. Letters between my father and his lawyer discussing the Miller acquisition, financial records showing payments to a private investigator in 1965, payments that stopped the week James Miller died. And this," he pulled out a single sheet of paper, yellowed with age, covered in handwriting that made Isaiah's breath catch. "This is a letter James Miller wrote to my father 3 days before his death. A letter my father kept as a trophy, I suppose. I found it in his safe after he died." Isaiah took the letter with trembling hands. The handwriting was shaky, clearly written under duress, but the words were clear. "Mr. Thornton, I am writing this letter because I want there to be a record of what you have done. even if no one ever sees it. You have stolen my songs. You have threatened my family. You have made it clear that if I do not sign your contract, something terrible will happen to me and everyone I love. I will not sign. These songs are my children, born from my soul, and I will not sell them to a man who sees black artists as nothing but raw material to be exploited. I know what you are capable of. I know that men like you have been destroying men like me since before either of us was born. But I also know that truth has a way of surviving, that songs have a way of outlasting the people who try to steal them. So do what you will. Kill me if you must. But know this, my music will find its way back to my family someday. My children's children will sing these songs and know where they came from. You can steal my work, but you cannot steal my legacy. And someday, someone from my blood will come for what you have taken. May God have mercy on your soul, because I will not. James Miller. March 12th, 1965. Isaiah read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down his face before he could speak. He knew they were going to kill him, and he wrote this anyway. He was braver than anyone I've ever known. Marcus's voice was thick with emotion. And your great-grandmother was brave too. She took that letter from the accident scene before the police could find it. She sent it to my father with a note that said, "I know what you did. I will never forget, and neither will my children." My father kept both letters in his safe for 60 years. I think they haunted him. I hope they did. Isaiah set the letter down carefully, his mind racing through everything he had learned, everything he had planned, everything he had expected this confrontation to be. He had spent 6 months preparing for this moment, researching Marcus Thornton III's schedule, learning his routes, positioning himself on this corner every Saturday afternoon until the billionaire finally appeared. He had expected a fight. He had expected denials, threats, lawyers descending like vultures to protect the Thornton fortune. He had not expected this, a man who knew the truth, who had been carrying the same guilt Isaiah had been carrying, who wanted justice as badly as Isaiah did. There's something else. Isaiah reached for his guitar, turning it over to reveal a small compartment hidden in the back of the body, a compartment that only someone who knew the instrument intimately would ever find. He opened it carefully and pulled out a bundle wrapped in oilcloth, papers, photographs, and a small metal canister that looked like it belonged in a time capsule. My great-grandmother saved everything she could. Letters my great-grandfather wrote to her. Photographs of him performing, original sheet music with his handwriting, and this... He held up the metal canister. This was inside the guitar when she got it back from the police, hidden in a compartment my great-grandfather had carved himself. She never opened it. She said she was waiting for the right moment, but the right moment never came. She passed it to my grandmother sealed, and my grandmother passed it to my mother sealed, and my mother passed it to me sealed 3 days before she died. Marcus stared at the canister. "You've never opened it?" "I was waiting." Isaiah met his eyes. "Waiting for you. Waiting for this moment. Because whatever is inside this canister, I wanted you to see it too. I wanted you to watch when the truth finally came out. I thought..." He paused, reconsidering. "I thought I would be opening it in front of my enemy. But maybe I'm opening it in front of an ally instead." They opened the canister together, in a back booth of a Harlem diner, 60 years after it had been sealed. Inside was a small reel of microfilm, 1960s technology that could preserve information in a space small enough to hide anywhere. And with it was a note in James Miller's handwriting. "If you're reading this, I'm dead." The microfilm contains recordings I made in secret, conversations with Marcus Thornton Sr., where he threatens my life, offers me money for songs he knows are mine, and admits that he has dealt with other black musicians who refuse to cooperate. I don't know if this evidence will ever be enough to bring him to justice. White men don't go to prison for killing black men, not in 1965 and maybe not ever. But I want there to be a record. I want my children to know what happened to their father, and I want whoever finds this to understand. The music industry was built on the bodies of black artists. We created the songs, we created the sounds, and they stole everything, including our lives. Don't let them win. Don't let them forget. And don't let my songs die with me. James Miller Marcus arranged for the microfilm to be professionally developed and digitized. The process took a week, during which Isaiah stayed in Marcus's guest house. The first time in 2 years he had slept in a real bed, eaten regular meals, felt safe enough to close his eyes without one hand on his guitar. Marcus asked for nothing in return. He seemed to understand instinctively that Isaiah needed time to process everything that was happening, needed space to grieve for a great-grandfather he had never known, but whose legacy had shaped his entire life. When the recordings were finally ready, Marcus and Isaiah listened to them together in Marcus's home office, surrounded by gold records and photographs of the artists who had made Thornton Records famous. The audio quality was poor, 60 years of storage had taken their toll, but the voices were clear enough to understand. Marcus Thornton Sr.'s voice, smooth and confident, making offers that sounded generous until you understood the threats beneath them. James Miller's voice, tired and scared but defiant, refusing to sign, refusing to sell, refusing to pretend that theft was legitimate business. And then, on the final recording, dated March 14th, 1965, one day before James Miller died, the conversation that would change everything. You're making a mistake, James. A serious mistake. Marcus Thornton Sr.'s voice was different on this recording. Colder, harder, stripped of the false friendliness he had used before. The only mistake I made was trusting you. James Miller's voice was steady, but there was fear beneath it. I came to you because I thought you were different, because you said you wanted to help black artists, give us a fair deal, treat us like equals. But you're just like all the rest. Worse, maybe, because you pretend to be something you're not. I'm a businessman, James. I do what's necessary to succeed. And right now, what's necessary is for you to sign these papers and walk away. I'll give you $5,000, more than you'll make in 5 years playing clubs. Take the money. Go somewhere else. Start over. It's a good deal. It's theft. Those songs are mine. My name should be on them. My children should inherit them. You're asking me to sell my legacy for pocket change. A long pause. Then Marcus Thornton Sr.'s voice, soft and deadly. I'm not asking, James. I'm telling. You have until tomorrow night to sign those papers. If you don't... Another pause. Accidents happen, especially to colored musicians who don't know their place. That car of yours, 1957 Chevy, isn't it? Nice car. Old brakes, though. Old brakes can be dangerous on these mountain roads. Are you threatening to kill me? I'm explaining how the world works. You can either get paid and walk away, or you can be stubborn and end up in a ditch somewhere. Your choice. But think about your wife. Think about your children. What happens to them if something happens to you? The recording ended there. Isaiah sat in silence, tears streaming down his face, listening to the echo of his great-grandfather's final days. Beside him, Marcus was shaking, not with grief, but with rage. Rage at his father, rage at the system that had protected him, rage at 60 years of injustice that had built the fortune Marcus had inherited. I'm going to destroy him. Marcus's voice was barely recognizable. I don't care if he's dead. I don't care if it ruins everything. The world is going to know what Marcus Thornton Sr. really was, what this company was really built on, what my entire life has been built on. Isaiah wiped his eyes and looked at the man beside him, this billionaire who was crying for a black musician he had never met, who was ready to burn down his own legacy to honor someone else's. How? Isaiah asked. How do we make them pay? Together. Marcus turned to face him, and in his eyes Isaiah saw something he hadn't expected. Hope. Your great-grandfather was right. The music industry was built on the bodies of black artists, Not just James Miller, hundreds of them, thousands of them, stolen from and exploited and erased from history. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. We're going to expose everything, not just my father's crimes, but the entire system that made those crimes possible. And we're going to make sure that every artist who was stolen from, every family that was cheated, gets what they're owed. The press conference happened 6 weeks later, in a ballroom at the Waldorf Astoria, in front of 300 journalists and a live television audience of millions. Marcus Thornton III stood at the podium, flanked by lawyers, historians, and a panel of elderly black musicians who had survived the era when their songs could be stolen with impunity. Behind him, projected on a massive screen, was a photograph of James Miller, young, handsome, holding the guitar that would eventually find its way to his great-grandson. And beside Marcus, wearing a suit for the first time in his life, stood Isaiah Miller, holding the bone pick that had been passed down through 4 generations. 60 years ago, Marcus began, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to reveal. My father, Marcus Thornton Sr., built Thornton Records on a foundation of theft, exploitation, and murder. He stole songs from black artists who had no power to fight back. He threatened them with violence when they refused to cooperate. And in at least one case, the case of James Miller, a brilliant blues musician whose work became the cornerstone of our catalog, he arranged for that artist to be killed when threats weren't enough. The room erupted. Questions shouted, cameras flashing, the controlled chaos of a story too big to be contained. Marcus waited for the noise to subside, then continued. I am here today to make a full confession on behalf of my family and to announce a comprehensive plan for restitution. Thornton Records will be transferring ownership of all songs stolen from James Miller, 47 compositions in total, to his surviving descendants. We will be paying $340 million in back royalties, calculated based on 60 years of profits from those songs. And we will be establishing a $200 million fund to investigate other cases of music theft from the same era and compensate the families of artists who were similarly exploited. He paused, looking at Isaiah. But I want to be clear about something. I am not doing this because I am a good person. I am doing this because I was a coward for 56 years. I knew what my father had done since I was 12 years old, and I did nothing. I inherited a fortune built on blood, and I spent it freely. I told myself I would make it right someday, but someday never came, until a 14-year-old boy sat on a street corner in Harlem and played a song that his great-grandfather wrote, a song that my father stole. A song that should have died with James Miller but refused to. He gestured to Isaiah, inviting him to the microphone. The boy approached slowly, aware of every eye in the room, every camera, every person waiting to hear what he would say. He had practiced a speech with Marcus's communications team, but when he reached the podium, he set aside the prepared remarks and spoke from the heart. My name is Isaiah Miller. I'm 14 years old. For the past 2 years, I've been homeless, living on the streets, playing my great-grandfather's guitar for tips just to survive. I never knew James Miller. He died 40 years before I was born. But I knew his music. I knew his stories. I knew the way my mother's face would light up when she talked about him, even though she never met him either. He was a ghost in our family, a presence we could feel but never touch. He held up the bone pick, letting the light catch the worn initials. This pick belonged to my great-grandfather. He carved it himself, and he played with it until the day he died. Inside it, hidden for 60 years, was the evidence that proved what really happened to him. My great-grandmother kept it safe. My grandmother kept it safe. My mother kept it safe. And when my mother died, she passed it to me and told me, find the truth, make them pay, and don't ever let anyone silence our family again. Isaiah's voice cracked, but he pushed through. I came to Harlem 6 months ago because I knew Marcus Thornton III drove through here every Saturday. I sat on that corner for 23 weeks, playing my great-grandfather's songs, waiting for him to hear me. I thought he was my enemy. I thought I was going to have to fight him, expose him, destroy him. I didn't expect— He paused, glancing at Marcus. I didn't expect him to be waiting for me, too. I didn't expect him to be carrying the same guilt I was carrying. I didn't expect him to want justice as badly as I do. He turned back to the cameras. My great-grandfather wrote in his last letter that his music would find its way back to his family, that his children's children would sing his songs and know where they came from. He was right. It took 60 years, but he was right. And today I want to say to him, wherever he is, I want to say, Grandpa, we found it. We found the truth, and your songs are coming home. The aftermath unfolded over months. Lawyers reviewed contracts and calculated royalties. Historians documented the full scope of exploitation in the early music industry. Journalists investigated other labels, other artists, other families who had been cheated out of their legacies. The Thornton Confession, as it came to be called, sparked a national reckoning with the music industry's racist past, a conversation that had been avoided for decades, suddenly becoming impossible to ignore. Marcus Thornton III resigned as CEO of Thornton Records within a week of the press conference. The company was restructured, its leadership diversified, its practices reformed. The stolen songs were returned to the Miller family estate, generating royalties that would support Isaiah and his descendants for generations. And the James Miller Foundation, funded with $200 million from Marcus's personal fortune, began the long work of identifying other artists who had been exploited and ensuring their families received compensation. But the change that mattered most to Isaiah wasn't financial. It was personal. 3 months after the press conference, Marcus Thornton III filed papers to legally adopt Isaiah Miller. The adoption was finalized on what would have been James Miller's 95th birthday, in a courthouse ceremony, attended by lawyers, journalists, and a handful of elderly musicians who had known James personally and wanted to witness the moment when his great-grandson finally found a home. "You don't have to do this," Isaiah had told Marcus the night before the adoption was finalized. "You've already given me more than I ever expected. The money, the recognition, the chance to tell my family's story. I don't need you to adopt me too." Marcus had looked at him with eyes that held 60 years of guilt finally beginning to heal. "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for me. For 60 years I carried my father's sins. I inherited his money, his company, his name, and I never did anything to deserve any of it. But you inherited your great-grandfather's courage, his talent, his refusal to be silenced. That's a legacy worth passing on, and if you'll let me, I'd like to help you carry it." Isaiah had agreed. Not because he needed a father. The ghost of James Miller would always be more father to him than any living man could be. But because he understood something that Marcus was still learning. That family wasn't about blood. It was about choice. It was about showing up, day after day, and doing the hard work of loving someone. James Miller had chosen to die rather than betray his family. Marcus Thornton III was choosing to live differently than his father had. And Isaiah was choosing to believe that redemption was possible, even for the children of monsters. 10 years later, Isaiah Miller Thornton stood on the stage of the Staples Center in Los Angeles, accepting the Grammy Award for Album of the Year. He was 24 years old, a graduate of Berklee College of Music, and the most celebrated blues artist of his generation. The album that had won him the award was titled River of Stars, a collection of 12 songs, all written by James Miller, all stolen 60 years ago, all finally restored to their rightful place in music history. The audience rose to their feet as Isaiah approached the microphone, the bone pick hanging from a chain around his neck, the same pick that had survived 3 generations of hiding and running and waiting. Behind him, the screen showed photographs of James Miller, young and alive, playing the guitar that Isaiah had inherited, creating the music that had outlasted every attempt to destroy it. 60 years ago, Isaiah began, his voice carrying across the arena, my great-grandfather was murdered for refusing to let his songs be stolen. The men who killed him thought they had won. They took his music, erased his name, built an empire on his grave. They thought they could silence him forever. He paused, looking out at the crowd, the celebrities and executives and music legends who had come to celebrate the industry's highest honors. They were wrong. You can kill a man, but you can't kill a song. You can steal credit, but you can't steal soul. My great-grandfather knew that. He wrote it in his final letter. My music will find its way back to my family. My children's children will sing these songs and know where they came from. Isaiah held up the Grammy, its golden surface gleaming under the stage lights. Grandpa, they came back. Your songs came back. And tonight, the whole world is singing them with us. In the front row, Marcus Thornton III, now 78 years old, his hair white, his empire dismantled, his guilt finally absolved, wept openly. Beside him sat the surviving members of the James Miller Foundation Board, the historians and lawyers who had spent a decade uncovering the truth, the families of other stolen artists who had finally received their due. They had come to witness this moment, this triumph, this proof that justice delayed was not always justice denied. Isaiah finished his speech and lifted the guitar that had been passed down through 4 generations, the same cracked, tape-repaired instrument he had played on a Harlem street corner 10 years ago. He played the opening notes of River of Stars, the song that had started everything, the song that had brought a billionaire to his knees and a family out of hiding. And as the melody filled the arena, 40,000 people sang along, singing words that had been buried for 60 years, singing a song that had survived murder and theft and time itself. On the screen behind Isaiah, the final image appeared. James Miller's letter, the one he had written 3 days before his death, the one that had ended with a prophecy that had taken 60 years to fulfill. Don't let them win. Don't let them forget. And don't let my songs die with me. Isaiah played the final chord and spoke into the microphone one last time. They didn't die, Grandpa. They never died. And as long as there's a Miller alive to play them, they never will. The crowd exploded. Confetti fell from the ceiling. And somewhere, in whatever place the dead go to rest, James Miller finally heard his great-grandson sing his songs and knew that his legacy was safe at last.